Conversations That Matter is a partner program for the Center for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
Welcome, Mr. Graham Baldwin.
Nice to be here.
Thank you for joining me. We're talking about education, where we're at, how we're building the curriculum of the future, especially in the secondary school system, because as we start to approach like an entirely different kind of working world, the demands on universities and therefore downstream are going to change. What exactly is miniversity?
It's an attempt to treat people in grades 10 through 12 a little bit more like adults than high school children, in an attempt to get them ready for not only going to university but succeeding there. So we want them to be ready for success, which so many people are not when they go. So we thought it's reimagined high school, but because high school has so many connotations, we decided to change the name to miniversity.
When you say reimagined, what do you mean? Like, you still have classrooms, you still have teachers, you have a building. It's not like it's become a virtual environment.
No, it's not a virtual environment, it's a real environment, but it doesn't have classrooms. It does have teachers, certainly, and very good ones. But it's reimagined in the sense that we've taken everything really back to bare bones and said, now, if we were starting now, knowing what we know now about learning, knowing what we know now about universities, the problems they're facing and so on, what would grade 10 through 12 education look like for people who are preparing for that? That's what I mean by reimagined. So
what does it look like? The model that we've been, particularly here in North America and probably in most Western European countries, and I would suggest in so many other places, is students go into class, they work their way through different grades, different subjects, they move around from one class to the next and work towards hopefully having a comprehensive enough education that it sets them up to be independent thinkers.
Yes, and clearly it doesn't, and that's why it needed reimagining. I think that the situation is really very interesting. What you've just described is accurate. That is the way most education is. But let's look at some of the implications of that and some of the things which, if you separate them out and say them to people, they sort of nod and say, yeah, that does seem rather strange. I mean, take one thing, for example. You come to June, school year ends. Let's take somebody, it doesn't matter what grade, let's take grade 9 for the sake of argument, right? The English grade 9 finishes, and somebody finishes with a mark of 55, which is a pass, and somebody else finishes with a mark of 95, which is also a pass. And then they go away and do nothing for several weeks, and then they come back in September and invariably start as though they're at the same place.
But is there not also a regression in their learning? It's my understanding you go back in September and the curriculum is such that I'm going to take you back to where you were maybe in February or March of last year and then bring you up to speed, and then the learning continues after
Well,
that.
yes, but wouldn't that be rather a strange thing to do? I mean, that's rather a waste of time, right? I mean, we should be doing it better than that, I think. So, you know, I think there are a lot of things that needed reimagining.
So are you telling me that you're eliminating a summer vacation and that it's going to be one class all day?
We're not eliminating summer vacation yet, because we're not...
Is yet the operative word?
Well, yet. We are introducing a fourth term next year. Now, the fourth term will be optional, but it will work through the summer. We are eliminating a number of things. Yes, we are eliminating a number of classes a day. We actually do one course per block, and a block lasts for 20 days. And the school day for the actual academic subject, there's a tutorial beforehand, but is 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock every day.
So it's a longer day.
It's a longer day.
And it's focused on one course.
For 20 days.
Now, it's not like you sit there non-stop in that environment and do only that during the day, is it?
It is that you do only that during the day in one sense, in the sense that that is the subject you're studying during that day, yes. But you're given assignments, you're given tasks and so on, so you're not in front of a teacher all the time. The teacher's there all the time. You're able to access the teacher all the time. Much of what the teacher might want to say to the whole group is already recorded on video. No, it's really designed so that the teacher is able to teach multiple students at the same time, and that the students are able to have a good deal of their own selection of how they learn. You know, there are those that like to go to a spot, an isolated spot in the building, and learn on their own. They have everything they need there, computers, etc., etc. There are those who prefer to work collaboratively, and we have many collaborative spaces. There are those who need frequent attention from the teacher, and the teacher's always there, and they can have the frequent attention. But it means the teacher's speaking to the students who need the teacher to speak to them, and not basically, as so many classes do, actually interrupt the learning of the student.
So would you call this a new pedagogy?
Well, I would, if it hadn't been for the likes of Socrates and Aristotle and Confucius, who used it before. Yeah, I think nowadays it would be a new pedagogy.
To an old pedagogy.
Return to an old pedagogy, probably, yes.
And how do we characterize this? How do we classify this pedagogy that is a departure from what we've come to know, not just here, but pretty much globally?
Well, in a way, we hope that's what the term miniversity will do. It'll come to mean this, you know, that people will understand that in a miniversity this is what happens. I think it responds to a lot of the problems that education has, and also meets a lot of the demands of the future. So let me give you a few examples of the things that, the constraints on learning, or the restraints even on learning, which exist in the current situation, which this program removes. For example, it removes the constraint of time. You don't have to stop learning English because an hour's passed and now you're going to learn math. You can learn, and you can learn deeply, and you can learn efficiently and effectively, and you have time to make sure you understand the concept, and you have time to play with the concept, you have time to
so you actually have time to experiment.
You have time to experiment. You've got time to check that you know it right there and then, instead of having to check at night at home on your own without the teacher.
Right, because one of the things that challenges that I see in the school system is you're rewarded for getting it right, but you're not rewarded for experimentation or learning by failure and then reattempting.
Well, that's exactly right, and of course that means that there's a sort of lack of, in a sense, a lack of resilience and a lack of critical thinking going on, which are two of the skills which are really vital today.
I've got to get you to hang on for just 1 second while we take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Conversations That Matter is a not-for-profit program made possible thanks to the charitable support of the following and from viewers like you. Please visit conversationsthatmatter.tv and help us to continue to produce this program.
Well, we keep hearing about people who say that they're successful in business or whatever career that they're in. They go, well, my greatest learning happened through my biggest mistakes. And yet when we go through school, we're not given any reward for getting it wrong. We're just told, okay, you're not up to the task. There is no, okay, let's try again. It's like, no, you didn't get it right, and therefore you don't get the passing grade. Oh,
well, yes, and that's wrong. That's quite wrong, and that's
well,
not.
I agree with you.
That's not what we do. I mean, you know, the method, the approach, the ideas, the thoughts. Yes, they can be mistakes, but as you say, you've got to find out your mistakes and work out why they were mistakes, and so on and so forth. You know, this is what life's about, isn't it? I mean, you know, nobody's going to lead a perfect life. Nobody's going to be in a job which is perfect all the time. You know, you get things like the Challenger disaster. The Challenger disaster happened because of a mistake.
Yes.
You know, you've just had a Tesla crash.
Self-driving car.
Crash because of a mistake. Nobody knew it was a mistake until it happened. And those people have got to learn from that, and did learn from it, and will learn from it, I have no doubt. Students are no different. They should be allowed to make mistakes, and even encouraged to make mistakes, because this is the time when they can make them and recover from them without great consequence, or it should be without great consequence. If they do it later, sometimes it can have great consequence.
Well, it can be catastrophic.
It can be catastrophic. This is one of the reasons that curricula has to change. You know, it has to stop being learning facts, learning fixed bodies of knowledge. Yes, we need to know things. There is some suggestion that modern methods throw out knowledge, and you know, because if you can look it up, you don't need to know it. We don't quite agree with that. I think you do need to know things. You need to know things in order to utilize them. But there comes a time when knowledge isn't simply enough. It isn't enough. You've got to be able to use it and apply it and know when to apply it. And this is what the miniversity allows. You can wrestle with a problem in the miniversity for the whole day, if that's what it takes, with as much assistance as you need from your colleagues, from anything you can access on the web, from the teacher, and you can come up with your own conclusion. It may be wrong, but if it's wrong, you don't lose all your marks. You're going to be given credit for the way you went about it.
So I can hear some people going, okay, but how does that appropriately set me up for the workplace? Because so much of the school curriculum has been, I'm going to train you to be a good little worker, and you are going to do as I instruct you to do. But you now know how to read, write, do arithmetic, do a few of the things that I need to be able to do so that you can perform those functions. But I don't want you stepping outside of the boundaries of the tasks that I've given you. Yeah. And so if you're setting up somebody to say, well, I want you to look at this, understand it, and say, but there might be a better way. What happens when employers go, but that's not what I want?
Well, I don't think there are that many employers of that nature left. And then those that are left are quickly dying out. Most of the jobs which were mundane, assembly line type jobs, they've gone. And the sort of jobs where people had to sit compliantly twisting one bit of wire or doing something or other, they're gone. People work in teams now. There's collaboration, there's innovation. People want ideas, they throw ideas around. I mean, our school, which is right downtown next to the Terry Fox statue, is surrounded by high-tech companies. You look at their walls, you have no idea what's going on inside, but actually they're making some of the most advanced technological equipment in the world. And they're not, you go in there, they're not doing it by sitting in rows, you know, being told what to do by a boss. They're in groups, they're discussing with each other, they're trying things out and failing often. That's the point, failing often.
Right.
And yet, in the end, succeeding because they're working together. And they have to be able to think, they have to be able to read, they have to be able to understand, they have to be able to know outside the box, they have to be able to not, you know, what they do, they're not learning in silos. These are not silos. You don't say, oh, they're computer scientists, they just sit. They are computer scientists, yes, but they're also having to think about, well, what does the customer want to do? How will the customer know it works? You know, all this sort of stuff. They need to be thinking all the time. And the traditional form of education was actually, as you quite rightly said, designed to suppress that.
Yes.
Completely.
Oh, I know. It caused me no end of problems when I went to school.
Right, right.
I'd go, but why?
Yeah,
and the teacher would say, because I said so.
Exactly, exactly. Me too. I mean, I had that sort of problem as well. You know, because I said so. Just sit down and learn it, yes. Yeah. And of course, you had to do it in order to get the marks then. But I don't think now that is changing rapidly. It's not changing rapidly enough, perhaps, but it's changing rapidly.
This is our second break. We'll be back in a moment.
Conversations That Matter is a not-for-profit program made possible thanks to the charitable support of the following and from viewers like you. Please visit conversationsthatmatter.tv and help us to continue to produce this program.
Even, for example, in a country like China, which is a vast population, very great difficulty in making it a level playing field for all the students and so on. You know, I've been there 3 or 4 times talking at the invitation of the Chinese government about education and about how to get more critical thinking, if you like, more innovation into their curriculum. Even they are concerned about it. They realize that if they're going to win the Nobel Prizes in the future and so on and so forth, they need that sort of person. And we're just trying to make sure that our students are that sort of person.
Okay, so you've touched on an interesting point there, critical thinking. What exactly is critical thinking? Like, how do we define what that is? It's not just sitting there, I don't like that.
No.
It's much more than that. So is there a definition of what critical thinking is?
I don't know that there is a definition. I think it's one of these things that's come to be a sort of term which is, you know, catchy. And so people have plugged into it and used it and said, oh yeah, critical thinking, that's good, you know. Well, it is good because what it really means, all thinking is critical in a sense, right? And it means approaching things from any number of particular areas, you know. You've got to teach people not to believe everything they See, we were taught, probably, I don't know if you were, but I was sort of led to believe that anything I read in the newspaper was probably true. Or anything we read in a book was probably, if it was in print, it was probably true.
Yes.
We know now that's not the case. You know, anything one of our leaders said was probably true. Not the case. Critical thinking simply means to look at something from many different points of view.
So what happens when you've got that many people who are all thinking critically, and they start thinking critically about the curriculum or the perspective of the instructor, and they start going, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but, or why? How do you maintain some kind of control or order so that it doesn't descend into anarchy?
Well, because they're engaged. I mean, it's engagement. You know, there's not even a hint of anarchy. This is a big difference between a normal class, of course, in a normal high school, and what's happening here. Even I've been surprised by how little there are hints of anarchy in the situation. They are totally engrossed, totally engaged in what they're doing.
So allowing that to happen, though, would suggest that there is a certain level of respect for the student as a sentient being that can think for themselves.
Absolutely. Well, these are grade 10s, youngest ones in there, and grade 12s are the oldest. Absolutely. These are young adults.
But that it stems from the mindset of the administration and then the people who are the instructors.
Yeah, they are young adults. There's no question about it. And that is our mindset. Our mindset is that these are not kids who need to be told everything that they must do. There is freedom during the day. If they want to go and get a cup of coffee, they can go and get a cup of coffee. You know, we have our own little coffee bar, but if they want to go out, they can go out. They just ask someone, is it okay to go? They ask the teacher, basically, you know, are you going to want all of us in the next half hour? If the answer is no, they go out. There is that freedom, yes, and there is the respect for the freedom that comes with it, and a respect for each other, and a respect for the institution. It's good.
You used the word teacher, and I have grappled with this for a long time. Can you actually teach somebody something, or can you help them to discover for themselves?
Well,
and is that the fundamental difference in the approach that you're bringing to this?
Well, that is a difference, yes. I mean, the teacher's job, if you want to look at it this way, the teacher's job is to enable learning. And yes, the way the teacher presents something will enable or disable learning, depending on how well he or she does it. Which is another point, of course, about modern day education, is that the teachers are more important than they were. Some people think that teachers become less important.
Oh, no, they become
But they become far more important. And they have to have far more capacity to teach and understand than they currently have. The training needs to get much better. They need to be from the higher echelons of success rather than the medium or low echelons of success. The teacher is vital in this process, yeah.
This is fascinating. I wish we could just push right through, but I got to take one last commercial break. We'll be back in a moment.
Conversations That Matter is a not-for-profit program made possible thanks to the charitable support of the following and from viewers like you. Please visit conversationsthatmatter.tv and help us to continue to produce this program.
Well, the most valuable resource we have as a nation are the minds of our citizens.
Yes.
And if we can foster that to grow in a way that allows them to create new ideas, which add to the overall economy in ways that we can't even begin to imagine right
Exactly.
now, then we've got great outcomes.
Exactly. You know, we don't want students who, because of their socioeconomic circumstances or whatever, are denied a good education and denied the ability to think for themselves. I mean, the whole point of education, when it became public education anyway, was to enable people to understand citizenship and what was going on, to enable them to read, enable them to be free in a sense of the shackles that had kept them subjugated before. Well, there are similar shackles now that need to be shifted from people.
This is a bold vision.
Yeah.
How has it been accepted? You say you have 50 some odd students at the moment.
Yeah.
It's still, I would imagine that you are bucking a trend and that there must be resistance to what you're doing.
Yes, well, not as much as I might have expected, and It's interesting. You know, I decided to go about it by remembering Peter Drucker's words. Peter Drucker, you know, as you know, a rather famous management scientist guru, said, you know, he was talking about making change, and he said there are various ways of making change, but I think the best way is to make the change and then manage it. His view was that if you spend a long time consulting with all sorts of people, the change never got made, actually. It was so watered down that it wasn't effective. So I just sprung this on people. I prepared them. I asked them to come back last year, to the teachers, to the school with the whole year's work thoroughly prepared. Usually they might come back with a term, thoroughly prepared, but the whole year thoroughly prepared, because I had an idea I might do this, but I needed to do more research before I implemented it. Anyway, then I implemented it. Now at first there was, I wouldn't call it resistance, I would call it fear. You know, apprehension.
Yeah.
How are we going to do this, you know? But I was amazed at the speed with which that went away when they started doing it. Because it answers so many questions. I mean, from a teacher's point of view, for example, just let's take a simple thing, like your non-teaching time. You know, teachers always have non-teaching time, and it usually gets scattered around a timetable somewhat randomly. And therefore it can land at a useful time or a fairly useless time. And all they do is have a cup of coffee because there's not much time to do anything else. You know? Well, this way, when a teacher's not teaching, they're not teaching for a whole block. They're not teaching for 20 days. Now, if they want to be, if they're doing, shall we say, they're doing a master's at UBC in the evenings or something, they can really get ahead on that in 20 days. If they want to research something, they can really get ahead on that. You know, there's no constraint on it. They can do their professional development thoroughly, deeply, and for a reasonable length of time. And it's useful time.
And hopefully they don't get burnt out then the way that we see so often in the public education
Exactly.
system. Yeah.
And that's why the block system has an interval between each block. There's a week's interval, which is a bit of a respite, if you like, for the students too. They do a symposium on something that matters during that time. They do a quick revision of all the courses they've already done, and then on to the next one.
So I guess there's two ways that we can measure success in what you're doing. That's how many go on to post-secondary education. I'm sure that based on the model that you're talking about, that we might see higher numbers making it through to post-secondary education. But ultimately then, how do their lives play out as contributing citizens?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what we want to know, isn't it? But too often, you know, we're trying to get results too quickly.
Yeah.
As you've suggested, we want to know how their lives play out. So when they're 35 or 50 or whatever, we know more than when they weren't. We're not around by then, but you know, trying to get the results straight away. You can get the exam results, as you say, the entrance to university, how they did they stay in, did they drop out, all this sort of thing. You can get that quickly.
Yeah.
And the results are very good so far on those fronts. But as you say, it's later. It's later that you really know. And, well, we won't know.
That's decades in the making.
It's decades in the making, yes. But you know, you have to have confidence in what you know. You know, and I have confidence in it. I think it's a very good program, and I think the students who go through it are going to be very successful. And that, I think, is going to be borne out, even though I won't be around to see the results.
Well, I applaud you for your boldness, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Doing this.
My pleasure. Nice to talk to you.